Alright, so we're checking out the GEPRC T-Cube18. This is their first in this new T-Cube series with the gem fan. This is the 45mm propeller. So this is the analog version, and this comes with the 25,000 kV 1002 motors. There is a 2S version that is HD0, which I do not have. That one has the 18,000 kV version of these motors. So the specs are going to be the same except for the motor kV and the fact that the HD0 version is running on 2S, and instead of the A30 battery connectors for 1S, it's going to have a XT30 connector for 2S. Otherwise, the frame is the same, the flight controller is the same, the props are the same. Just the only thing that's different is the motors and the video transmitter system. So on the analog version, you're going to get the 400 milliwatt analog video transmitter, which is sitting on top of this plastic piece here. And just have a whip antenna going out the back. And you have the Caddx Ant 14mm nano camera. In the front here, on the HD0 version, is the Whip Light VTX with the Eco camera. The flight controller is the same on both. It's a 1 to 2S flight controller. It's an F411. It's called the Taker F411. It's 12 amp ESCs, and the ESCs, while they are running BlueJay firmware, it is running them at 24 kilohertz, not 40 kilohertz, and I'll talk about that. It's an important fact, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. In terms of the frame, got a top plate that's 1.5 millimeters thick. Got these nice countersunk screws here to make everything nice and flat, so nothing's going to be hitting the battery. You have the battery pad here, and then you have a couple of rubber bands here for putting your battery underneath. And the motor wires are taped on, as you can see right here, direct soldered to the board. The bottom plate is a single piece. The micro USB port comes out of the bottom here. The bottom plate is 1.5 millimeters thick, and it is pretty solid for this weight. And you can see here that the mounting pattern for the all-in-one flight controller is a standard 25.5 millimeter by 25.5 millimeter whip style all-in-one flight controller. Got some M2 screws here on the bottom, standard ones for mounting all the hardware. They do have a buzzer here on the back, and it is activated for various warnings, including low voltage. And also you can activate that via an aux channel as well if you happen to crash and lose it in the grass, which you can, but it's pretty tiny. You can activate the buzzer. It's kind of nice. It does have a like a standard T antenna here for the Express LRS receiver. It is a serial Express LRS receiver, and it is built into the flight controller, so kind of nice there, but it's kind of on the stiff side. It doesn't really bend, and I know that if you crash hard enough here, the little connection point there where the antenna meets the T there, it's just solder, and it can break off, so it's something to keep in mind. That is a vulnerable point, because it is kind of sticking out. It can catch on something and possibly break off. I think for something this small, it's going to be a park flyer, you're not going to be flying too far away. A standard, dipole or whip antenna would have been totally fine, and possibly more durable in the long run. For the rest of the stuff that comes in the box here, so you get a spare set of the gem fan 45mm propellers. You get some spare parts here, spare rubber bands here for mounting the battery. You get a propeller removal tool. You get this Allen key here for the M2 screws, and then you get this special tool here. This is a torque screw. So these are, that's the name I couldn't think of at the time. These screws are actually torque screws, not hex screws. And you need this particular, so don't lose this, you need this particular screwdriver to tighten up those screws. When you get this out of the box, do check the screws are tight enough. I did find a couple that were a little on the loose side, so I just used the included screwdriver to tighten those up. Get some documentation, some stuff where you can download the manual, QR codes, and then you get the manual for the all-in-one flight controller, 1 to 2S of course here, as I mentioned, as well as some of the settings and the wiring diagram, and you get your standard set of stickers. The batteries I used to fly this were the 1S 550 Lava LiPo from BetaFP with the BT 2.0 connector. And these do work with the A30 connectors. They are compatible. I also flew it with the 450 version of the same Lava series from BFPV. It's a little bit smaller and a little bit lighter. Here's how much the drone weighs by itself. It's coming in at 38.26 grams. And then with the 550 1S LiPo, it's coming in at 52.47 grams. And with the 1S 450, it's coming in at 50.55 grams. So I'll show you the two narrated flights at the end on each of these batteries. The first flight's going to be on the 550, second flight's on the 450. Flight time's about 3.5 minutes on the 550 and 2.5 minutes on the 450. The flight times are a bit lower than I would like. I think that the motor on here is a little bit too high in terms of kV. I think if you're more interested in like freestyle performance, but you don't care about flight time too much, then yeah, you could probably go with the 450 1S here for this kind of ultralight setup at this motor kV. But you're going to get like a lot of voltage sag. You'll see that in the flight footage for this battery. I would recommend lowering the motor kV by putting a motor output limit, and you're going to get less voltage sag, and overall I think you'll get more flight time and it's going to feel a lot better. And I did do that as a part of a test. So I took the motor output limit and I reduced it to 80%, which is equivalent to about 20,000 kV instead of 25,000 kV. And as you can see here in this footage, going to higher throttle, you don't get the low battery warning right away, and you don't get the voltage sag to the same extent as you would on stock settings. So you could go the other way and go with a larger battery. So instead of a 550, if you want more flight time, go to say like a 750 or 850 1S. And yeah, it's going to be heavier, of course, so it's probably not going to do so well in freestyle, but you'll get more flight time, more than the 3.5 minutes that I got, and maybe less voltage sag. Usually if we have a bigger battery, the higher kV motors don't affect the battery as much. You'll have, some voltage sag, but not as much as on the smaller batteries. Also keep in mind, if you do go with a 80% or whatever motor output limit, it will adjust, well, basically it'll affect the PID tune. So you need to adjust the PID tune up. So I think the master multiplier is at 1.2 on the stock settings. If you go to 80%, probably bump that up to 1.35 or 1.4. That way it'll compensate for the lower motor kV and you'll be able to keep the same PIDs. The PID tune out of the box for the stock settings is fine. No issues there. It's just that because of the really high motor kV, you just get a lot of voltage sag, so just can't really push the quad as much as you could. And it makes sense because this is heavier. This is 38 grams. With a slightly smaller motor than the Meteor 75 Pro that I just reviewed recently. That one comes in at like 30 grams with an 1102 motor at a lower kV at 22,000 kV. And on these same batteries, at least this 550, I was not getting nearly the same amount of voltage sag. So if you want to see what the voltage sag difference is like going from a 30 gram quad 1S on the same prop, this Gemfan 45 millimeter propeller, go check out that video, the Meteor 75 Pro video, and you'll see what the difference is. Basically, going to a larger motor with a lower kV on the same prop, on the same battery, you get much less voltage sag. So, as I said, you can just kind of get around that by adjusting the motor output limits and adjusting the PIDs, and you'll get probably similar performance, although it is heavier. So 8 grams, so 38 grams versus 30 grams, that's a pretty significant weight difference. That's almost 30% more weight that you're carrying around for essentially the same setup. And actually it's a slightly smaller motor as well. So that's why you have much lower or much less flight time and overall just a lot of voltage sag. I mean, theoretically with a even better battery, you could get better performance. Now, honestly, these 1S LiPos from BFPV, the Lava LiPos, are probably some of the best ones out there for 1S. If you know of ones that are better than this one, do let me know in the comments below. I don't have the tattoo versions of these, the 550s, or maybe they're 450s. I'm not 100% sure what size they make, but As far as I know, from the 300 milliamp hour versions, their performance is pretty similar, so I would expect the same for these as well. But if you have different findings, do let me know down in the comments below. I would be curious to know about that. Now, this is an interesting frame. I'm thinking that I might do a 2S conversion for this at some point in the future. Maybe go to like a DJI-03. I'll have to probably come up with some sort of custom camera because this is for a 14 millimeter camera. But, you know, this motor can, with a motor output limit, you can go 2S on this one. And I think then you'll get probably similar performance to something like the Pavo Pico. So the Pavo Pico is an 1102 motor. I think that's at 14,000 kV. So you can just adjust the motor kV on the same prop. The Pavo Pico uses this exact same prop and probably get some pretty good performance that's similar to the Pavo Pico going to like a DJI-03. So I had to figure out some way to mount that in here. It's going to be a pretty tight fit, but I think there's enough space in there to do it. And then probably some sort of custom camera mount to get a naked 03 in here. Obviously, it's probably going to be pretty heavy. I think similar to the Pavo Pico that I built like that was probably like a year and a half ago. That one had a naked 03 in there. It was like 50 something grams. So I think it's doable and would make a pretty nice little 4K park flyer. And as you note in the narrated flight that I'm going to show you in a second, the quad is really, really quiet. So I think with this prop, even though it's 38 grams, it's heavier than the Meteor 75 Pro. It's less noisy because there's no prop guards in the way, kind of creating that air disturbance and creating additional noise. It's actually really, really quiet. So if you want to fly something like this in the park and not bother anybody, this one is a nice quad to pick up. Now, overall, the build quality is really good. GEPRC's, build quality is pretty nice. I think they kind of made a couple of mistakes here in terms of parts selection. I would have gone with a lower kV motor, 22,000 kV, maybe even a little bit bigger, like a 1102 instead of the 1002. Same prop is fine. I would have gone with a 48 kilohertz, the frequency on the BlueJay firmware. I'm not sure why they picked 24 kilohertz. Standard on micros these days is 48 kilohertz, so it's a kind of an odd choice there. And yeah, I don't know, maybe I probably would have gone 2S on this one as well instead of 1S, just because even though it is analog and it is lighter, and there are more 1S options. I think for something like this, 2S is probably going to be better overall. Now, if you're interested in maybe a 2S video running on analog, let me know. I might be able to do something like I can probably swap out this connector to like a BT 3.0 connector and run it on 2S with just even a lower motor output limit. Again, let me know in the comments below if you want to see that or a DJI-03 conversion. I may make a follow-up video on this one on the second channel at some point. But that'll do it for this video. Link will be down in the video description if you guys want to check it out. And here are the two narrated flights. Hopefully you'll be able to make some determinations from these two flights as to what you think about the quad overall. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one. Talk to you guys in the next video. So this first battery, I'm going to be flying the 550 size Lava, a little bit heavier. I did put in my rates, so flying with the stock tune and with my rates. Yeah, it feels, in terms of power, similar to the Meteor 75 Pro that I reviewed recently. It's got the same prop, so that's surprising. And so far pretty smooth. There's not a lot of wind right now, a little bit, but not a lot. Very quiet. I can barely hear it. And let me bring it closer here. But that jet over there probably sounds louder than this quad. Bring it right next to me here. So you can definitely fly this at a park without bothering anybody. Of course, there's always going to be some people that might hear it and be bothered by it, but This is very, 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 very quiet. So we're getting a low battery rating. I am using the lava lipos. Yep, get the beeper going. So the beeper is tied to the low battery warning. Kind of surprising, it's only been a couple of minutes. And this is a fairly new battery as well, so this 25,000 kV might be a little bit high, and the weight is also more than the Meteor 75 Pro. Oh, now it's telling me to go land now. So flight time is less than expected. Thought I would get into the 3.5 minute range, but it looks like it's going to be less, or I may need a bigger battery. I think if you're more interested in flight time versus doing freestyle, maybe go with like a 660 720 1S with the BT 2.0 or the A30 connector. Yeah, so I did change my low battery warning to 3.3 volts. So that is not stock, just keep in mind. Okay, now we're pretty much consistently below 3.3 here, so I'm gonna go ahead and bring it in. So about 3 minutes here on the 550. Yeah, this one is a little bit less than expected. Let's try the 450 next. All right, trying the 450 1S now. A little bit lighter, and it's just the same lava battery, so can feel it's got a little bit more oomph. Tune is all right. Now they got a gardener over there doing something super noisy. Can't hear the quiet at all now. Let's do a little power loop, and I get a low voltage warning already. So this is doing a serious some serious voltage sag.